Pakistan, thank you for your patience and my apologies for the slight delay. The government and people of Pakistan, as you know, for the last many decades have been standing steadfast in support of our Kashmiri brothers and sisters. The Jammu and Kashmir dispute has been on the agenda of the Security Council since January 1948, and it remains an internationally recognized dispute as affirmed by 11 successive Security Council resolutions. This, ladies and gentlemen, has been a battle of hope against tyranny, of courage against fear, and of sacrifice against brutality. Through all of this, the Kashmiri people have remained steadfast, and they have faced the continuing campaign of brutalization with courage. India has now, since 2019, usurped the fundamental rights of 8 million Muslim Kashmiris, helpless men, women, and children, and their constitutional guarantees, which they had enjoyed for many a decade, have now been removed, and 900,000 armed Indian troops occupy the territory in order to repress these unarmed civilians. Ladies and gentlemen, just imagine living in an area where there is one armed soldier standing over 10 men and women, 10 elderly, a family of the elderly with children, with women, with the infirm, and they are constantly in fear and they are constantly insecure. The media blackout which accompanies this brutality and many other restrictions have caused unspeakable human suffering. Tragically, hundreds of Kashmiris have also been injured and killed in this repression. The systematic use of state terrorism as a policy is evident. There are arbitrary detentions without trial. There are illegal arrests. There is a specific crackdown on the media and human rights defenders, and the wanton incarceration of Kashmiri political leaders, and most regrettably, the use of pellet guns which blind and injure. There has also been the demolition of entire villages and neighborhoods as reprisals. This is particularly reprehensible. The Indian government has also altered the domicile rules and land laws in order to bring into effect a demographic change. The attempt is to convert the Muslim majority into a minority in their own home, in their own land. And this is in complete violation of both the international law, the UN Charter, various UN Security Council resolutions, and also the Fourth Geneva Convention. This today, ladies and gentlemen, is leading to disempowerment and disenfranchisement. Today, 4.2 million new domicile certificates allowing Hindus from the rest of India to come and settle in the illegally occupied Kashmir have been issued. This means that 35% dilution has already taken place in the last 2.5 years. Kashmir Solidarity Day this year has special significance for us because there has been a recent upsurge in Indian atrocities. If I may inform you of the horrifying figures, since 1989, there have been 96,000 deaths, over 160,000 arbitrary arrests, and over 25,000 pellet gun injuries. The saddest aspect is that as a policy and tool of state terror, over 11,000 women have also been raped during this period. And today in the Kashmir, there are 108,000 orphans. The humanitarian situation today is perhaps more grave than ever before, and this has been pointed out, noticed, and communicated by the UN Secretary General, by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and also by various sections of the international media and civil society. On the 4th of August last year, 18 independent human rights experts termed the situation in the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir as one of free fall. They urged the international community to step in. Also, there have been 2 Kashmir reports in 2018 and 19 by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights calling for the establishment of a formal commission of inquiry. India remains in violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions which provide that the final disposition of the state of Jammu and Kashmir has to be made in accordance with an impartial plebiscite conducted under the auspices of the UN. I would also like to point out that India has not reciprocated any of Pakistan's overtures for peace and stability. Through its actions and machinations, India has destabilized and continues to destabilize the entire region. Calls for access to the region by international media, international human rights, and the OHCHR remain unaddressed and spurned. This is a futile attempt to conceal the illegalities and cruelties that are taking place over there. The right of free assembly, the right to offer prayers in mosques, and the right to protest peacefully all are being denied. Normal life, ladies and gentlemen, remains crippled and paralyzed due to curfews and restrictions. Consequently, food and medical shortages are being faced. Normal life, business, and education remains disrupted. Given that the situation in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has gone from bad to worse since the illegal unilateral actions of the 5th of August 2019, we would accordingly request that all of you, A, express concern in your national statements at the Human Rights Council sessions. B, call upon India to comply with its international human rights obligations. C, call upon India to stop its atrocities and to allow unimpeded access to the media and international observers. D, call upon the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights to continue the Kashmir reporting process. And finally, to urge India to engage with the UN human rights machinery and implement the recommendations of the 2 Kashmir reports, including the acceptance of the establishment of a formal commission of inquiry. Ladies and gentlemen, in a global era, we cannot remain oblivious to the suffering of millions of helpless, unarmed civilians. Indeed, there is a lot going on in the world today to distract us and to draw our attention. There are various hotspots and various challenges. The pandemic is but one example. But this is a festering wound in South Asia, which has been bleeding for the last 73 years. It is a problem which is not going to go away with time. The patterns are very clear. The more repression that the Indian government inflicts upon the Kashmiri people, the more resistance there is and the more resistance is generated, and we are caught in a vicious cycle of brutality, suffering, and mindless violence which has to stop. So we call upon all of you as our friends and colleagues in the international community to play your role to ensure that the vulnerable, the women, the children, the elderly and the infirm of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir are given their rights, they're given their safeties, and they're given their freedoms. I thank you.
قبل ما تخرجوا ما تنسوش تابوناو في العشان يوتيوب وبارطاجيو الفيديو وديروا جيم وتابعوا الدار على مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي.